Let's get it on, everybody. I'm jcontra, and I'm here playing Wild Gunman, the last of the 1984 light gun games developed and released for the Nintendo Famicom. It's actually pretty weird that you would have just a burst of 3 games developed by Nintendo specifically for the Zapper. Although a reminder that the Japanese Zapper was a plastic 6-shooter, and I would not recommend trying to get it through airport security. However, the year was 1984. There actually weren't a lot of games out on the Nintendo at this point. Like, most of the games looked boring, and especially when you look at the end of the year of the Famicom, when you look at, like, you know, November, December 1983, you've got math with Donkey Kong, and learning English with Popeye. I mean, they're not exactly the games that we remember today. But then the light gun comes out, and holy shit, is this insane? Because let's play some Wild Gunman. You have to think about how insane this would have been. Like, you've played some Mario Brothers, you've played Donkey Kong, but you've not played anything like this. And it works. That's the thing I think I need to stress, is that if you can get a normal, like, you know, concave or convex, I don't know, but not a flat screen. I don't think the Zapper works with flat screens. And by this I mean, of course, flat screen CRT televisions. A Zapper is never going to work with any, you know, modern LED or LCD, HD TV, all that crap. It's not going to work. You got to get a CRT if you want to get the Zapper and use it properly. I'm going to play it normal for a little bit, and then we're going to have some fun. I just wanted to show off what was referred to in Back to the Future 2 as a baby's toy, because you have to use your hands with it. Look at that. Oh, I think my best is 0.3 so far. Yeah. I actually don't know if it goes below 0.3. And also note, and I've brought this up before, but you do not actually kill anybody in this game. You just, like, blow off their hats. Or you just embarrass them. And they just they fall over, but they're not dead. 0.25, it's personal best. That's pretty good. Now, it's interesting, so you have to wait. If you shoot them before they say fire, that counts as a miss. Here, let's see, I'll show you. See, look at that, yeah. You shoot before they say fire, you're done. You're done! Which is, I mean, I guess there's supposed to be some kind of honor. I mean, look, you get a reward for killing these guys. But it's like, who cares if I wait for them? Like, I guess it's supposed to be like a proper duel. You know, a proper shootout in the Old West. Ooh, that was tricky, because not only you can hear that, like, musical build-up, like it's like do 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 do, and it's a do do. But it'll fake you out. Just listen. Give it a listen. Sometimes it'll play the whole thing. Sometimes it'll cut off halfway through. That's why you gotta listen, and you gotta have your finger ready to shoot. Well, no, I don't know. We'll see how far I can get. We'll see if it goes, because I'm pretty consistent at 0.3, so unless they get the clock to go to like 0.2 or something, there's no way. Do you shoot off his belt buckle? Is that why his pants fall down? So hold on, I wonder if you need to be accurate. No, you don't need to be accurate at all, actually. I aimed at the cactus over to the right, still hit him. That's weird. Let's see. Yep. No need for accuracy on this boy. JP Styles, what are you doing here? I mean, I know you're in Australia. Okay, all right. We're gonna spice this up. I'm gonna start shooting from the hip. Ooh, shit. Oh man, that was good. What? Bullshit. Friday night, man. Yeah, I hear ya. I'm doing the same. Just playing, you know, had work, so now I'm playing games. What? I was pointing at the screen. I was pointing at the screen. Oh my god. Okay, so when you're facing one guy, it's too easy unless you're shooting from the hip, like me. Because then apparently... I think what happens is, like, you come up and I think I shoot. I think I make the mistake of not shooting straight at the screen. I think you just have to hit the screen. You don't actually have to hit the guy. You just have to hit somewhere on the screen. And when you're shooting from the hip, you might shoot low, shoot high. Your accuracy is going to be terrible. We're going to do 2 outlaws now. Now this is where things get tricky. And where things get a lot more fun. Now it seems easy at first. You think, oh, you just have to shoot 2 guys. Just shoot one, shoot the other. But they say fire at different times sometimes. So you gotta pay attention. They make it easy at first. But once you start getting around 10, it becomes anything but easy. Interesting that so to shoot one guy, it's 33. It's 3/10 of a second. But then it takes half that time to shoot the other guy. I guess it's part of it's the reaction time of just waiting to shoot. Look at that, because it takes 0.4 and then 0.14 to shoot the next guy. That was interesting. I didn't expect only one of them to say fire. But the other one has a reward on him. Like, why am I not shooting both of them? They also have these, like, crazy demon eyes. It's hard to notice because, you know, everything happens so fast. But when they're getting ready to shoot you, their eyes turn into, like, purple stars. Ooh, that was close. 0.4. Holy shit. Oh my lord. But this is, you You know, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, have we encountered a voice in a Famicom game yet? I don't believe so. I don't believe we've had actual voices in Famicom games. We've had, like, animal noises, we've had jumps. But no. This is the... Is this the first word ever said by a Nintendo console? Maybe. So JP, that is an interesting question. JP asks, how many light gun games have come out on the Famicom? We have 3 in this first year. I want to say Yoshi's Cookie is another one. I know that the Zapper was not super popular in Japan. One, because... Well, I mean, I don't know why it wasn't that popular. Maybe just because Japan isn't as obsessed with guns as America is. Although I see plenty of airsoft guns in Hardos, so I don't know if that's true. I think there are plenty of Japanese people who are obsessed with fake guns. There's the gun otaku in Japan, after all. But for whatever reason, the Zapper only came out once. I have not seen a company come out with a replacement Zapper for a Japanese console. The only replacement Zappers I've seen are American Zappers, and they don't even work natively with Japanese Famicoms. So that tells you how popular Zapper games are here. But you know, actually, I'm going to look that up real quick while I... Hold on. Because I believe there were a bunch of American and maybe even PAL Zapper games that came out that in those regions that did not come out in Japan. But as for natively made Japanese Zapper games... Whoa! Missed him. I missed him. I was shooting so fast. Again, there were only 3 that came out in 1984, the first year that the Zapper released. Those were Wild Gunman, this is the first one, Duck Hunt, and Hogan's Alley. As for games, let's see. There are apparently a bunch of optional gun games. Yeah. Like Mechanized Attack, it's optional, but that's America. Hold on, I'm gonna look at the Japanese article for this one, because we need to get the Japanese. We need to get the Japanese perspective on this one. Oh my god, I'm so good. So, according to Japanese Wikipedia, they're actually in Japan, there were only 3, and it was the first 3 that came out in 1984. There were, let's see, Operation Wolf by Taito. Apparently, it was optional. Mad City. See. There was also the Adventures of Bayou Billy. So let's see, we got Adventures of Bayou Billy. That was compatible with the Zapper, but you didn't need it. And then there was Mad City. Well, yeah, there are a couple. But again, only 3 that required the use of the Zapper. Interesting. Interesting. That is weird. So I guess it just didn't take. It just didn't take off for whatever reason. And we're already around 30. Like, I think, you know, I guess Wild Gunman just not super difficult. Like, what was Hogan's Alley, especially the what I like to call the Hogan's Alley part of it, that was actually pretty challenging. But it's pretty clear that my reaction time on this is really good. It does get harder when you're trying to look up things on Wikipedia at the same time as when you're shooting. But otherwise, I think the lowest I've seen the game go is 0.4. You know, 0.4 of a second. That's been the lowest amount of time you've had to draw your weapon. Oh, yeah. Shooting from the hip. I'm shooting from the hip now. Ah, damn. I'm at 0. Does that mean I'm out? Yeah, because I think I got hit 2 other times. I believe you could not buy the, I don't think you could... Well, I should... I don't know. Wait, I was waiting... I was just sussing him out. I was seeing what's going on. Let's see. That's so weird, but I'm aiming right at him. I don't understand what's going on with the game. So if you want... I don't believe the Famicom gun, the Famicom Zapper, I don't believe it was sold separately. In order to get the gun, you had to get it in this package. It was this red package that had like a cowboy's behind on it. You were like, and it was like, oh, it's like a cowboy gun. And it came with the Famicom gun, black, and Wild Gunman. I do not believe they were sold separately. Okay, let's see. This is weird. I don't know what's going on. Okay, got him. Alright, I don't know why I'm hitting now and not before. Good. That's, I think the tracking's a bit off on this one, to be honest. TBH. I need to get my distance. Yeah. Alright, I'm gonna try getting my distance. Thank you, JP. I'm just a professional gamer. I dare Dr. Disrespect to play me in a game. A Wild Gunman, Duck Hunt, anything. Yeah, okay. I know, that's weird. Dr. Disrespect may be good at PUBG. He may be good at point-and-click adventure games. But when you're holding a real gun... This is weird. Like, I'm shooting at the bottom left. I'm very clearly shooting at the bottom left, using the iron sights, because I don't use a scope. Yeah. This part, I don't want... It's not working. It's not working. It's not that hot. Like, my iron sights. I've got him in my iron sights. I don't know what's going on. I don't know. Alright, we're going back to 2 outlaws. We're going back. We're going to see if we can break 99. I'll make it a little bit more challenging for ourselves. I could do this part fine. Like, no problems. Was it Yoshi's Cookie? I thought Yoshi's Cookie was a Zapper game. To the Earth. So yeah, there's plenty of games that came out in North America and Europe. And actually, Nintendo developed games that required the Zapper. And games developed in Japan by Nintendo R&D that never got released in Japan, but got released abroad. So I guess that says something about how the Zapper was readily adopted outside of Japan, but in Japan, it's like, eh, meh. And I wonder why that is. Is that a cultural thing? Is it just that guns not super popular in Japan? Or, I mean, was it something else? Was it a space issue? Was it people didn't want to have to deal with accessories because Japanese, you know, living spaces are so small compared to America, maybe even Europe a little bit? I would be interested to see what Japanese people had to say about that, because I do not know. Just moving the mic so you can hear my burps better. JP asks, what TV am I using? Is CRT still available in Japan? So I am using what's called a PVM. Maybe if I can get up off my ass, I can show. Hold on. So this is my setup. That's the TV that I'm using. You can see it's a small CRT. I'd say it's probably about 15 inches, I'd say. 15 inches diagonal. And it's nice because it was meant to be used in like a TV studio. So it has high pixel density, the quality is great, it has S-video in. The only, I'd say, drawback to it is that it only has a mono speaker on it. So I had to buy some nice speakers of my own to use for the audio because I want to listen to nice stereo sound. But otherwise, it's incredible. It cost me $100, and that's because PVMs are sought after because of their high quality. But otherwise, sometimes you can find CRTs in hard-offs or in other recycle shops. In Japan, they're not very common. And I would say probably Japanese people were much faster to get rid of their CRTs because it's much nicer to have a thinner, smaller television in a small Japanese apartment than it is a giant box. So I bet Japan got rid of its CRTs a lot faster than America. I don't know about Australia though. How available are CRTs in Australia? Because I wouldn't be surprised if it was like America where. What? He said fire. That's just the game cheating. That's the game cheating. Whatever. I've been trying, you know, I want to get a CRT for my setup back in America. But I've just never had the time. Because, like, I don't want to spend my holidays back home looking for old-ass televisions. Also, my grandpa has an old-ass TV. So I think I'm set that way. I think he even still has a black and white television down in the basement. I don't know. I don't know what happened. I can't even believe, not paying attention, not paying attention. Okay, we'll do it one more time, but Wild Gunman, it's not a lot of meat to Wild Gunman if I'm gonna be honest. That is my one, I think my one criticism of the light gun games. The light gun games are very fun, but in a very limited sense, because Wild Gunman is just this. And it's fun, but it's really fun for about 10 minutes. Everything after that is just like, oh, I'm doing this again, and again, and again, and again. It's emblematic of very early Famicom games where it's a very arcade-like experience. And we're talking like early 1980s arcades where you're just playing the same screen over and over again, because that's all the technology and expertise they had. They didn't have Mario Twins out. They had Mario Bros. They did not have Super Mario. They did not have Super Mario Twins out in the world. So the levels were just the same thing over and over again, not anything unique or distinct. And the light gun games, I think take that repetition to the next level, which is fun for a few minutes. But when it's just this over and over again, it's kind of a drag. Which is why I wish that it didn't take until, I think, the Super Scope actually had some really fun games for the Super Nintendo. But that wouldn't come out for another, what, 7 years when you think about it? Like, we're now in the Famicom 1984. Super Scope doesn't come out till what, 91, 92 maybe? You know, early 90s? Like, that's when Nintendo decides to come out with some cool light gun games. Whatever. I can't wait to show off some of those Super Scope games, because holy shit, I remember playing, my dad had a Super Scope. And we would play this like mech game where you're like a mech, and you use the Super Scope to blow the shit out of other mechs, and it's like, oh my god. It goes really fast though. I don't think anyone has ever made like a very deep and very extensive light gun game yet. I mean, except like Time Crisis is pretty good. Except if you're really good at Time Crisis, that probably takes, what, 10 minutes to beat, I guess? JP, did they really have CRTs back in 2010? Man. let's see, where was I in 2010? Well, in college, see, I had a CRT in college, actually. Well, in my living room, I had a CRT. But in my room, in the room that I had, in my college apartment, I had a roommate at the time. In my room that was mine, I had an LCD. I had a fairly large monitor, but it was an LCD screen, so that's what I would watch stuff on. That's actually what I would play all of my, my PS3 and my Xbox 360 on. The CRT was actually, I don't even know whose that was. I think it was my roommate's. I think we would watch movies on it sometimes. We'd play my Wii. I had a Wii at the time. That's what we would play on it, because the Wii was standard def. There was no real point even plugging it into a monitor. Not that you could, because it didn't have HDMI out. Like, at best you could do component, and I didn't have component cables for that shit. I wish I still had that TV, actually. I wish I had taken that home, because the CRT that I have at my parents' house now is really small. They do have a nice flat screen in the basement that's a CRT, but, it's not the same. Also, it's in the basement. I don't have to drag my shit down there. Do you have what, JP, what are you playing games on? Are you playing games on a CRT? Or are you emulating? Which is fine. I have nothing against emulating. I've not seen it go below 0.4 yet. I'd say my response time, it's I'd say on average is 0.3. It's probably my average is like what, 0.32 or something, because like sometimes I can get like 0.25 if I go super fast, but usually it's like 0.37. I'd say, wait, mean, median, mode is my mode. The most times. My most common speed is probably 0.37, although 0.27, not too shabby, if I say so myself. .25, let's bring that down. It's all part of listening, having your finger on the trigger. It's only 42 inch. Oh my god. One day I might do an experiment and try plugging in my my Famicom into my my big screen. But I remember, what did I do? Oh, I think I tried playing GoldenEye. I tried playing GoldenEye on an LCD TV once, and I was just like, I can't do it. It's just so bad. I mean, I'd say PS1 games are probably okay. Especially, I can't remember if... You know what my problem is? My problem is with the modern TVs is that if you could plug them in via S-Video, they'd probably not look so bad. They'd probably look okay. Not great, but probably okay. Unfortunately, the Famicom and I believe the Nintendo, the original Nintendo, do not output S-Video. but I know Super Famicom definitely does. PS1 does. I've tried doing a component out from PS1, but I've never gotten it to work. But the PS2 games actually look pretty good when you output them to a big screen. If you do them via, you know, component. Or is it, I think it's component, right? That's the one where it's RGB and, you know, the audio cables, not the yellow for video, but the actual pure RGB signal. I played a couple games on the PS2 on the big screen. They look not bad. Not bad. And it's so weird to me that, you know, I know a lot of modern TVs don't even have composite inputs anymore. But for the ones that do, you'd think they'd, like, put in S-Video. Like, S-Video, I guess S-Video just wasn't that, like, common, now that I think about it. Like, I've never heard of anyone, except for me, actually care. I've never heard of anyone, except for people playing retro games, care about S-Video. I think it was just something that was nice to have. And I think maybe in Japan it was a bit more common. Because I know the CRT I used to have, back where I used to live, it had an S-Video port on the front of the TV. And I don't really see that in American CRTs. I am very interested in an HDMI mod to the N64. Someone recently put out like a chip, or it's not a chip, it's more like a circuit board that you use magic to solder to an N64 main board, and it can output over HDMI. And I'm very curious to see what that looks like over a big screen. It's not the original, but I think it'd be good for streaming. Like, when you're streaming, you're not really playing the original anyways, because it has to be put through a, it has to be put through some kind of, you know, pass-through anyways. I don't fault people going for the HDMI route, except for when you're doing, like, I don't know if I agree in streaming emulated stuff over the original stuff, just because emulation's not the original thing, so you're not experiencing it exactly as it was intended. Whereas when you're doing it through like an Elgato, like I'm doing, you're at least getting closer to what the pixels were supposed to look like. Yeah, Metal Jesus, he's got all that stuff. I think the N64 mod, I think it's like, first of all, I don't even think the guy actually, at least in the beginning, he actually wouldn't even sell the part itself on its own. He was like, this thing is really complicated to set up, so I'm going to sell it to, like, wholesalers. I'm going to sell it to, like, websites that will do the mod for you. I think you can get it yourself now. I think it's only been out for, like, maybe not even a year. So, we'll see. My soldering is not very good, as I can tell you from my... I don't know what the deal is with my current Famicom. I don't know if I just got, like, a bum AV Famicom, but I did the thing where you have to jump the side port on the AV Famicom to the Player 2 controller slot to actually even be able to use the Zapper. But now that I'm able to use the Zapper, I can't properly use the Controller 1 port. So I don't know if I broke my Famicom. It seemed to work fine when I cut the wires so that it wasn't jumped anymore. I don't know if the wires I put in, if they're like, they don't carry the voltage properly. I don't know. I did try recapping. My first ever soldering project was recapping a PC Engine Duo. And I managed to get it almost perfect, except for I lifted some of the solder pads. So I have a working PC Engine Duo with replaced capacitors, but it only has audio out through one of the channels. Oh my god, it could be like a $500 system. I only... how much did I spend on that? I didn't spend a ton on it. I actually got a really good deal on it. But it could be so much more. I don't know if I'm going to have like a professional do it or if I'm going to break into it myself. It's back in America, so I actually don't have access to it. I ended up buying a PC Engine, a Duo R, which works fantastically, and I'm trying to find an RX. That's like one of my holy grails so far. I just have never been able to find it cheap. It's always really expensive. Yeah, I actually did. I've repaired the belt. Did I? I've done it at least once. On Amazon Japan, there was this guy selling... They weren't, you know, the sturdiest of belts. They were just this, like, translucent, thin plastic replacement belt. Like, it wasn't, like, a nice, substantial, like, you know, thick rubber belt. Just a dinky little plastic thing. I managed to replace the belt on a twin Famicom, which was a pretty big deal for me because the twin Famicom here, if it's broken, if the drive belt is broken, which it almost always is, here it's the going rate's about 6,000 yen, so about 60 American dollars. I don't know how many dollary dues that is. I mean, it's like the Australian dollar. It's like 2 to 1, I think, maybe. So like it might be 120 Australian dollars. I don't know what the exchange rate is with the Japanese yen. So I'll just say 6,000 yen, or about 60 American dollars. But if you can find one that has a working belt, that's a $150 system. That's 15,000 yen, which is a lot of money. And the belt itself costs like 50 cents. And all you gotta do is just kind of take it apart. It takes a few tricks. The alignment was a real pain in the ass. I remember I bought like 3 original disk systems, taking them apart, trying to replace the belt. And I just like, there's like a weird disc, like a belt alignment that you're supposed to do. I could never get that to work, so I had to like do this weird system where I like, because the plastic was so thin on the belt, you could like get it through the gears without taking off the one of the cogs, so you didn't need to realign anything. And I managed to get that to work. I actually managed to... Did I beat the original Zelda on disc? I can't remember. I remember I played the disc system so much that... And the plastic was so dinky that just after a while, I think I was playing Zelda 2. It just like, the belt would just like slip off, like the motor rotator. And so that was a real pain in the ass to have to fix. Because the disc system is just horrible. I hate the disc system. I mean, I like the idea of the disc system. I just hate it because it is just so degraded over the last 30 years that it's just an intolerable system to work with. So if I want to one of these days get that that thing that you can plug into the memory expansion cartridge, that is like, it's like a USB adapter that you can put the dumped discs onto the USB. And the memory expansion that you plug into the top of the Famicom will actually read the disc images. I want to get that. I think that'd be really cool. And that's honestly the only way I see myself playing disc system games. Just because, especially like Zelda 2, you were loading stuff all the time. And just, you know, if the belt's going to slip every 10 times you read it, the belt is going to slip every like 10 minutes. And I was actually just in New York recently, and they had a working full twin Famicom for $400. Like, holy shit, $400 for a twin Famicom? You were insane. Not even in Japan is it that expensive. Like, most I've seen it go for in Japan for a working twin Famicom is $200. Like, Jesus. So what do you mean was not successful, JP? Was it you didn't get the belt on properly, or like was it just not because what would happen for me was I would take the disk system apart. Like, I would pull the gears off the bottom, and I would put the belt on, put the gears back, but it like wasn't reading the discs because the magnetic head that would read the discs, apparently there's like some alignment thing you have to do that is like it's like this arcane magic that no one has ever really been able to figure out except one guy on YouTube. So like, even you can replace the drive belt, but if you don't have that magnetic head aligned properly, it's like, that's why I hate the disc system so much. Just for like a week, it was a cause of stress to me, because if I have a problem, I want to be able to figure it out. That's what's driving me nuts about the Famicom and the Zapper. Is I don't understand why the points that I jumped are causing the controller 1 port of all places not to work properly. But then again, it might also be a controller issue, so I don't know. I could be full of shit. We'll see come Sunday when I start playing normal games again. Whoa! I thought we were gonna get to 99, ladies and gentlemen, but yeah, JP, I know what you're talking about, because the magnetic head, it was like, it's like this, it's like a little circle, and it's got that like, it's not exactly a screw, but it's like a hex screw that like, you use that to tighten the head onto the motor that drives, because like the cogs on the bottom are there to turn the top, and it's got the magnetic head on top of it. And I think if you don't align that head that's up here, that's up there properly, I had the same problem, and it was throwing like, mine were very specific, and what happened, it was no matter, I had like 3 disk systems that I tried to repair with belts, and they would all throw the same thing. It was like error 18, 19, and 20s. Like, it was like a disk alignment error. I didn't, like, for some reason, I couldn't get those to work. There was one guy, who, because this was a thing, like, Nintendo had to deal with this for years. They would have to go in and, might as well play while I'm yapping. Nintendo themselves would replace the belts on these, in Japan at least, I think up until like the year 2000. So there was someone at Nintendo, either now or at least up until 17 years ago, someone at Nintendo knew how to take apart these things and properly align them. The only problem is that documentation has never made it out of Nintendo, so no one officially knows how to properly align things. Like, there was some guy who was talking about, like, there's some, like on some disk systems, like, I think on some newer systems, there was, like, a hole in the bottom of one of the cogs, and you would, like, align that to, like, a certain degree, because there was, like, that triangular metal piece on the bottom that held all the cogs in place. You would get that circle to align into one of the gaps of that triangle or whatever, and that was how they supposedly aligned it at the factory or the repair center. The only problem is that that's unofficial, and I remember like doing that a million times across 3 different systems, and it never worked properly for me. So I don't know if this guy was just talking shit or maybe it worked. I think the last time I tried it, I think I got that to work using his system. But you have to be so careful when you're first taking everything apart that you cannot move anything. If you move anything, the alignment goes off and you're fucked. Yeah, there is just nobody knows. I think part of the problem is that it was because the disk system was only Japan. It's really hard to find Japanese documentation for stuff. So I just don't think anybody knows for sure how the disk system exactly works from a hardware perspective, from like, you know, a nitty gritty. Like, I know I think it was only just recently. I think it was only recently within the last 10 years that someone did proper schematics on the AV Famicom, and that's how people know now how to jump those wires. And I don't even know I think they might be full of shit, because I think I did mine properly, but I can't get the controller 1 port to work when I'm using the Zapper. So I think a lot of this stuff is guesses, at least in terms of the Japanese hardware, because Nintendo in Japan they managed to keep a very tight lid on a lot of stuff. We find tons and tons of stuff from Nintendo of America, but Nintendo of Japan is, first you have the language barrier, you have the geography barrier. A lot of the people doing archival work in America, you know, they just simply don't have access. You don't have the networks for that kind of preservation of stuff. Like, I'd say probably my holy grail is some kind of repair manual for the Famicom Disk System. I think that'd be huge. I think that would change the game. Because in Japan, you find so many broken disk systems. Although someone at Super Potato has figured it out, at least. Because you can find repaired disk systems there for about, at least, I would say a couple years ago, for like 6,000 yen. So someone in Tokyo has figured it out. But those systems are few and far between outside of Tokyo. I know Luke Morris, he figured it out, I think. But he never, like, I know he's got a guide. But I followed his guide a couple times and I never got it to work for me. So I think it's just one of those repairs that just made, I got lucky 1 out of the 4 times that I tried it. And even then, having repaired it with that, like, shitty, thin, translucent belt, it still doesn't stay on. I have not seen a good repair guide that features a proper belt that is actually going to last more than, like, you know, 20 read-write cycles. All I've seen are guides for those, you know, the crappy belts. I've not seen a good replacement belt come out for the Famicom Disk System yet. And maybe something has come out, because I think it was 2 years ago now that the Famicom Disk System had its 30th anniversary, so there was a surge of interest. And if it's lasted, but I think Japan's moved on to the Super Famicom. There was a while, I would say up until 2 years ago, Famicom was where it's at. Now it's Super Famicom. And I don't know if it's going to diffuse between the PlayStation and the N64. But I've actually seen N64 prices go down on Japanese stuff. Except for Get or Love, which shot up for some reason. So thank God I've almost completed my N64 collection. I'm only missing a couple cheap games. You know, that's So JP just asked, what about the lifespan of disk system games? Because right now, 30 years on, the only problem with the disk system so far has been the mechanism. That's been the weak point. That's why people have a hard time playing original disk system games, is because of the belt. The belt they put in 1986 just wasn't meant to survive for 30 years. I don't think anybody thought people would want to play disk system games 30 years later. So they rotted, they snapped, the humidity here is real bad, so that's going to wreak havoc on those rubber belts. But the discs themselves, they're magnetic discs, so I'm gonna say it's I have heard stories about people having problems with discs. I've not encountered a problem myself. I've played a few games. I probably, like you, I'd say I have about 3 or 4 disk system games. I managed to get them all working, but from what I've read somewhere, it's like if one of those electrons or whatever, you know, one of those charged magnetic things, magnetic doohickeys is, I believe, the scientific term. If one of those magnetic doohickeys flips on the disc is toast. However, I believe every Famicom disc, because it's magnetic, it is rewritable. So even if the discs start to fail just because of the magnets, just because of what's written, if that data starts to corrupt because of magnetic fields or whatever, it's theoretically possible that someone could make a Famicom disc, you know, writer. And actually, I remember reading a couple, at least a couple years ago, there are some people in Japan who managed to find the Japanese, writer kiosks. Or there have been plenty of, Hong Kong made, Famicom disc pirators. And those might actually save the Famicom Disk System, because, say, your copy of Metroid stops working. Just pop it in there, just rewrite it. It's the same game. As long as it's been dumped properly, you can just copy it 1-to-1. It's just, I don't know, but I don't know how long those systems are going to continue on, because that hardware might start to degrade. It's very possible that we might start losing those games, but we have the data. It's just having the hardware to write that data. I just think the disk system, it was daring, it was bold, it's interesting to read about and to experience once, but man, was the Famicom Disk System a mistake. Especially because the way they made those discs, you had cartridges that had more data than the discs, I think like a year later. So the disk system was interesting, but it was kind of just... It was just an insane idea at the time. Well, it made a lot of sense at the time, actually, because cartridges were limited, cartridges were expensive. Discs were cheap and had a lot of space. But the discs were unreliable, and very soon were being outclassed by cartridges. But then the PC Engine CD would come around. 1986. 3 years later, you had the PC Engine CD come out. So, not insane, just, I think one of Nintendo's, not missteps, but just something that, did not stand the test of time, which is rare for a Nintendo piece of hardware. Which is, insane. That's the standard by which we judge Nintendo. When something that they made 30 years ago doesn't work today, that's when we consider it a failure. Well, the disk system itself is like insane. Like it's so huge. Like the drive that they made. But also a lot of the space for the disk system is just for the battery compartment. Like that's something that I often forget is that they designed the disk system. Yeah, it was supposed to plug in, but you could also plug in like what was it, 4D batteries to get it to work. Like that's a huge that took up a chunk of space. And 80s computers, yeah, like they were huge. Ah, oh, shot the wrong guy. You tricked me, game. You're very sneaky. Oh my god, 2 shots in what would normally have taken me 1 at the same time. That's how professional I've gotten at this. You know, I'm trying to think of it. Honestly, the only good game that came out for the Famicom Disk System that did not get a cartridge port in Japan was probably Metroid, because Zelda came out on a cart and Castlevania came out on a cart. But for some reason, I don't believe Japan ever got a Zelda 2 cart, and it never got a Metroid cart, which I think is a damn shame, because those are some pretty good games. You know, it's interesting, JP, that you bring up the laser, because I bought a CDZ, a Neo Geo CDZ, and I'm just gonna bring the mic up here, and for some reason the laser on it didn't work anymore. So I went on the Amazon and I managed to find a replacement laser that I believe was the same model that. I mean, it was supposed to work, and it ended up working for the CDZ. I do worry about preservation, just because I know in Japan, in America, you know, the Video Game History Foundation and Frank Cifaldi and Steve Lin, they're doing the Lord's work, preserving the ephemera of video games. Hardware is a different beast entirely. Because, I mean, some of this hardware is tough as nails. Like, the Famicom, it'll be a cold day in hell before the Famicoms stop working. And especially, I think the way that cartridges are written, the way that cartridge memory is written is that they're written using mask ROMs. So while you know, like the dev cartridges that you would use to write and rewrite games, those are in trouble because that RAM is volatile, and that stuff could go basically, I mean, I don't want to say any time, but it's got a shelf life on it. Whereas mask ROMs, I mean, those theoretically are supposed to last like 1,000 years. Like, look, nothing's gonna last forever, but cartridges, they're gonna be around long after we're dead. CDs, I think, are the big problem, because so many CDs, like I remember I had a bunch of DVDs. This is when I owned physical DVDs. I got rid of all of them, but for a while I had this big library of DVD movies. And, I mean, I couldn't tell you how many of them just stopped working. And that was DVDs. Like, you know, you'd think DVDs should have a longer shelf life than CDs, because we would have figured it out, that technology of holding bits in plastic. But the DVDs didn't work out so well. I haven't had any DVD games fail on me yet. And I haven't had any CD games fail on me yet. But I think we should be a lot more... Yeah, disc rot is definitely a concern that I have, especially in Japan, where the temperatures, even inside houses, can vary so widely throughout the day. It gets super hot in the summer, super cold in the winter. I'm afraid that expanding and contracting, even of games that you try and keep in the closet, you keep it out of direct sunlight. I feel like a lot of Japanese games are gonna get lost, and who knows if they've been dumped properly. I know some of the games that I try and look for on the internet for like rare shit. Like I know Batsugun. No, it was Battle Garega. Battle Garega's been dumped, but it's not been dumped properly. Like the only dumps I can find of it are like these super specific file formats that are specific to a particular CD burner. I think I can't even remember what it was called, but it was like Nero or alcohol or something. I've not found a good. I have dumped my copy of Battle Garega as an ISO or whatever, a file that anybody could use. But I've not seen that go up. I've not seen anybody put up their own ISO of Battle Garega, for example, and there are plenty of other games that have that problem. Laser discs are a whole different beast entirely, because aren't laser discs analog? I think laser discs aren't even bits. Yeah, they use analog video, which is insane. Like, I guess they're not digital. So it's like, you know how CDs, they have the ones and the zeros? Oh my god. So but also, I mean, laser discs, that was the first time that like, we had thought of like putting things onto a metal disc shielded by plastic. So that disc rot for laser discs is a problem, and I guess will be a good bellwether of when we start need to freaking out. Once laser discs start failing in mass, that's when we maybe need to start worrying about DVDs and CDs, because they're not going to be far behind. Um, so yeah, I've been, one of these days I do want to sit down and try and archive all of the disc games that I have. That's going to be one day. Maybe when I start playing PlayStation 1 games. That's when I might start doing it. Cuz I have successfully dumped and burned some of my rare like Sega Saturn stuff. So I am afraid of the original discs getting lost. I'm not afraid of being able to play Saturn games in their original format on the hardware. But discs, they're just a mere vessel. I know the Sega Saturn was a couple years ago finally cracked to where you can play games through the serial port using like a USB device. So as long as those games are dumped properly, I'm not afraid of being able to play games on the original hardware. Um, yeah, the discs are gonna get lost. That's just what's gonna happen. We're gonna lose disc games within the next probably 100 years, whereas cartridges are gonna be around forever. Like, and that's I don't even see a scenario where I don't even see a scenario where cartridges start failing. Besides, maybe some cartridges have capacitors in them. Like I remember opening up my like a um, Contra 3 cartridge, and I believe it had capacitors in them. So the capacitors will start to fail on like Super Nintendo stuff. You just replace that. That's an easy fix as long as the capacitor fluid doesn't, as long as that doesn't eat through the motherboard. I don't see a significant problem. But yeah, Sega Saturn stuff's getting super expensive. So even I don't know if there's undumped Saturn games. That would be an interesting. I might start looking into dumping Sega Saturn games. I might actually go look into that right now. I'm thinking my throat's getting dry. Been doing this I had a lot of fun talking, JP. But I think, yeah, 9 o'clock. I'm going to Costco tomorrow, which is a very big deal for me. So I think I gotta get ready for that. But it was fun talking. I'd love to talk Sega Saturn with you next time. My plan is to be playing, because you're in Australia, so I can talk to you in normal time. I'm going to I'm going to play a bunch of Famicom games come Sunday, because I'm not doing anything. I'm going to start playing normal. We're going back. We've done all 3 light gun games for the Famicom. So we're going to finish off, hopefully, 1983 in terms of the Famicom and jump into 1984. But I'm going to give the Sega Saturn a look. I'm going to see if there's any undumped games, because I don't know if anybody's as psycho as me and needs to have every video game ever made. So the Japanese Sega Saturn might have some games that people don't know about. So I'm going to look for those. I had a lot of fun. I'd love for more questions about about retro collecting and about retro preservation. Something I'm interested in, but I haven't done anything significant yet. But this has been jcontra. I think I showed off how professional I was at Wild Gunman, doing quite well. Remember, this is a baby's toy because you have to use your hands. That's it for me. I've been jcontra, playing Wild Gunman, saying thanks for watching, and mahalo.